Hi everyone, I'm Terry. I wanted to make this video because it is Maternity Mental Health Awareness Week this week, and I just wanted to share not only my maternity experience but also my mental health journey that I've gone through, and basically just to raise awareness and share my story, and so that in the hope that maybe someone else can share their story. So I guess my mental health journey started in my late teens. I was plagued by anxiety. I starved, I binged, I purged. And really, there was no real reason as to why I should. I grew up in a very stable and loving home. We were encouraged to talk about how we felt. I think what it was for me is that my two female role models are the strongest women you would ever meet. They've both gone through so much, and they deal with each trauma in a really stoic manner. They're really quite controlled about it, and really just extremely strong, like stronger than I could ever imagine I could be. And I guess I wanted to be a little bit like them, and so I tried to approach stress and problems the same way they did, and it just didn't work like that for me. And so it developed into some mental health issues. And then when I was 25, I had Ethan. He was born at 27 weeks, and he was so tiny, so poorly. He was whisked away from me almost immediately and was taken into NICU, which is a neonatal intensive care unit. And actually, a doctor made a mistake, which resulted in him needing surgery when he was a day old. So when he was just 1 day old, he was put in one of the travel incubators, which are so much bigger than the ones that are in the maternity unit, which made him look even smaller and even more vulnerable. We were warned that the journey was going to be tough for him, and we didn't really have a choice. He had to go and have the item that was stuck in his jugular removed. So he was taken to a paediatric hospital where a heart doctor, a consultant I think he was, worked on him, and he said he was the tiniest person he'd ever worked on, and that really struck home with me. It made me think, he is so tiny, he is so vulnerable and so poorly. But luckily the surgery went well, and he was taken back to the maternity hospital and put back in the neonatal unit. And there really it was just, I guess, the standard preemie journey. So we had bleeds on the brain, a PTA, which is where the duct in the heart is open. He was fed through a nasal tube. He was ventilated, needing oxygen. Just standard the preemie journey. And I remember being asked at the time, how are you getting through that? You're so strong to be dealing with it. I'd have broken down by now. And I remember thinking afterwards, I got through it because I had to. I blocked out all of the emotions. In fact, it's funny, really. By looking at it from a medical and a scientific view, it took away the emotional attachment. And I remember once speaking to someone and saying, this was years later, he was ventilated at birth and blah, blah, blah. And they said, oh, I had no idea your baby had been on life support. And I said, he wasn't on life support, what are you talking about? He was ventilated. And I seen the look in her eyes, and it made me realise, oh, actually, it's exactly the same thing. But that was my way of dealing with it. If I'd have thought he's on life support, he's going to die, I probably wouldn't be telling you this story now. It would be a very different outcome. And so that's how I dealt with it. And a very good friend of my mum's at the time had gone through a similar journey. And she gave me one tip, which was to make a diary. Not so much about your emotions, but just everyday things, like today he's had a blood transfusion, today he's had 2 mils of milk. And so I did. And that's, years later when I found it after we'd moved house and I read it, it made me realise just how much I did block out in order to deal with the situation at the time. I literally went through that whole journey with blinkers on. I didn't think about it. It was Groundhog Day. I would wake up in the morning, I'd get to the hospital 6 or 7 a.m. I'd sit by the incubator all day. I would get a couple of minutes to hold. I'd pump by the incubator all day. I'd eat by the incubator. Eventually, 9, 10 p.m. I'd go home, set my alarm for during the night so I could pump, to get the milk production flowing more. And then get up in the morning and do it all again. And that's how I got through with it. And so it wasn't until reading the diary I realised how much I'd blanked out, and it was a lot. And so anyway, at 9 weeks and 6 days, 9 weeks and 6 days, Ethan was discharged. He was sent home, a massive 3 pounds 12 ounces. And that's really when my anxiety kicked in. He was so tiny, so fragile, so vulnerable. And I just panicked. I just thought, I'm gonna do something. He's gonna die. It was just an everyday thought that I was waiting for him to die. It just felt like imminent doom. And I'd feel it in my stomach, and I'd feel sick every day. And that was constant. He was in and out of paediatrics for the first few years, and he was really poorly. And so that didn't help. And so I went to the GP when Ethan was about 3. Now, I didn't recognise these symptoms as postnatal depression, and I was never diagnosed with postnatal depression because I didn't seek help. I thought this was just my normal anxiety because I was so used to feeling anxious about everything. I just thought it was that. But I went to the GP when Ethan was about 3, and I explained to him how I'd check on him during the night to make sure he's still breathing, how I'd wake up sweating with a nightmare. I could still hear the machines bleeping, how I felt like constantly anxious that he was going to die, he was going to be code blue and go straight through to resus again. And he said, the symptoms sounded like PTSD and sent me for some counselling. Now, the problem was my other general anxiety at the time, didn't allow me to go to public spaces on my own. So I got in the car and I drove to counselling, and I pulled up outside, and I couldn't get out of the car. I couldn't walk into that building on my own. There was no way I was going to be able to do it. So I went home, and I didn't seek any more help. I thought by not following the GP's instructions, that was going to make me flag up. And so I was worried if I'd gone back and talked about my feelings again, they were going to take him away from me. Social services were going to get involved. How could I look after my child if I can't look after myself? I'm mentally ill. And so that was a massive thing for me. Luckily I've got the most amazing support network. My family, I couldn't ask for anyone better. Even my distant cousins, we're all such a close-knit family, and we're all there for each other. And I've got amazing friends. So I did talk about how I was feeling. And, I didn't keep everything in. But I didn't seek help because I was worried. Ethan was the most wanted child. Sorry. I wanted him so much, and I was terrified that they would take him away. So I just got on with it. Then eventually, a couple of years later, Ethan was about 5, and I thought, he walked in on me crying in the bathroom, and I thought, I can't go on like this. It's not fair on me, and it's not fair on him. So I went back to the GP and told him how I was feeling, and I remember his exact words were, "Oh, you look okay, so it can't be that bad," and sent me home. I remember getting home and calling my mum and saying this to her. And it's funny because, I've had it off with the people as well. It's like, oh, how can you be depressed? How can you be anxious? You're so confident. You're so happy all the time. But it is just a mask. I put my makeup on. I go out and do what I need to do. And then when I come home, I take it off and I break down. So with my mum's encouragement, I went back to see a different GP. And this one was really understanding. And they offered me sertraline. And at the time, I didn't want medication because there's that stigma attached to it, isn't there? It's like, if you take medication, you know, you're reliant on it. And I didn't want to, but with her support and with her insistence, really, I started taking it, and I started seeing her like weekly and then fortnightly, just to talk through things, because I'd already made her aware that I couldn't go and speak to a counsellor because I couldn't go to a different place. And I can honestly say that doctor saved me, because if it wasn't for her, I couldn't be doing this video now. I couldn't be doing the things I'm doing now, publicly speaking, relaying this story. I mean, okay, I've got a few tears coming on, but I wasn't strong enough to even deal with it myself, never mind relay it to other people. And so I really just wanted to make this video, you know, just to say, if you are feeling like this, and you have been, you know, maybe you've been to the GP and they've said everything's fine, like they did with me, don't be afraid to go back. Don't be afraid to reach out. The service is there for you. You know, no one is going to think bad of you for reaching out and help. In fact, it actually shows your strength. And if you've got this far in the video, thank you so much for continuing to watch. You know, I do like the sound of my own voice, obviously. So thank you for listening. But if there's one thing I can ask you to take from this video, it's that it's okay to not be okay. Don't be afraid of asking for help. And I heard an analogy recently which has really struck a chord at me. And it's that life is like a train journey. And so you're on that train and the scenery passes your window and it's constantly changing. And that's exactly what your life is like. So just because you look out that window today and it's gloomy and the scenery's not that nice and it makes you feel a little bit rubbish, don't think that that's always going to be like that. You're going to move on to the next destination and the scenery's going to be a lot better. Everything's just going to be a lot brighter. And the whole thing is, you just don't get off the train. Stay on that train and just keep going through, because nothing is constant and everything will keep changing. And just because you feel bad today doesn't mean you're always going to feel bad. So, if you made it this far, like I said, thank you very much for listening. And I hope you all have a good day. Bye.